Since you talked a bit about disciple making, I thought I'd wanted to quickly read out 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 2, which says that the things you have heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to reliable people who will also be qualified to teach others. Do you know any real life examples of this kind of ripple effect of discipleship?
Yes, we had fun sharing this Gospel Patrons event recently, and we called it a ministry ecosystem example. And a lot of times you hear people asking questions about how they can give most effectively. So we wanted to use this as an illustration to the point of disciple making is the most effective form of support rate of investing in ministry. And there was a story of one man who had a heart to see people from more diverse backgrounds go forward into ministry. A little bit like the point I made earlier, it's better for people who are from those communities to minister to those communities,
Mhm.
whatever your life experience has been. And there's an underrepresentation of people in ministry roles from diverse backgrounds. And so this trust was set up to try and redress some of that. And this trust, called the Sola Trust, supports people through ministry training. And one of the people who were helped is a great guy called Rob Prendergast. And he heads up and he founds and leads the Pioneers Scheme at London City Mission. And he was trained through Oak Hill and Cornhill, both theological training colleges, by this trust. And he now has gone on to set up the Pioneers Scheme. And that then also takes what he learned through that theological training and makes it more accessible to people, again, from disadvantaged backgrounds who maybe theological college isn't the right thing for. Maybe maybe English is a second language, they don't finish school. There's all kinds of reasons. Maybe they can't afford to go to theological college, even with some financial help, they've got to work. And so the Pioneers Scheme is set up for that. And then there was a young urban musician who came through the Pioneers Scheme, very talented guy. He was discipled as well as given theological training in sharing the gospel. And through that scheme, and he found that was really important. And he mentions his mentor, Felix, who came alongside him as part of that training. And he really began to grow, though he was successful musically. He really began to grow with a heart for gospel East Reach local church. And so he's ended up partnering with a ministry in the Czech Republic where there aren't many Christians. And he goes there. It's a lot more glamorous when he does things here, but he goes there and he's doing a great job going into local schools. And he goes into a range of different local schools, performs in those schools, then invites the children and the students, young people he meets through those interactions, to out of school events. When they come to the out of school events, there they are presented the gospel and the truth of Jesus Christ, and many of them respond. And then they are integrated into local churches where they receive discipleship. And we met the young woman from the Czech Republic who organizes that initiative. And I met her a while ago at a conference. I was just blown away. And she's bringing musicians from different places in the world. She's working with a load of local schools, a load of local churches. She's organizing the follow-up and discipleship for young people who respond. That's hard work. That's quite a tricky thing to do. And she's just pulling it off really well. And so I partner with her. This is where anyone can be a gospel patron. Definitely not hyper wealthy. But I support her ministry and I pray for her, and she's doing an amazing job. And then we also meet a young woman who became a Christian as a result of this tour that happened in the Czech schools. And she's now an active member of her local church, and she's discipling a group of teenage girls, young girls, who have shown an interest in learning more about Christianity through a tour that's just happened. And you can see there's making of disciples who are making disciples who are making disciples who are making disciples, all every step of the way. There are different partners who are funding that ministry. And what's lovely is actually when you're looking at what's most effective, there are points in that whole ecosystem that are more cost intensive than others. And there are cheaper points. Ministry in the Czech Republic, because the exchange rate is cheaper than ministry here. But all of it's needed and all of it's valuable. And so if we've got some of the parts are more cost intensive than others. But when you put it all together, that's how it works. And just really focusing on the disciple making element of it is really exciting for me. I love it.
Yeah.
That young girl who's now discipling teenage girls a few years younger than her, it's just so encouraging.
Yeah, it really was. And just to briefly say, I think that at the Gospel Patrons National Gathering, it was incredible seeing it in person from all the way throughout. So that was really cool to see it actually happening in real life. And again, I think you've alluded to it a little bit before, but just to elaborate and expand on it, I think another framework you've spoken about is related to understanding the principles of giving in terms of ministry, sacrifice, and the relational aspect of it. Do you mind talking about that in a bit more detail too?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that, as again, we've talked about why giving to something that includes sharing the gospel, includes making disciples, is really important. And keeping that relational, again, is what you see in the Bible now. I'll talk a little bit about that later, but I think the sacrificial element is so much, because our hearts need this. We need this, and God knows that we need it. And the Lord tells us, pick up your cross and follow me. And that there are, our lives can become just so comfortable, and we can stress about small things. But the reality is, when you look across history, look around the globe, we're doing really well.
Yeah.
And I think there is something that's slightly countercultural in the notion of being sacrificial, and what that can look like can look really different for different people. For instance, some of the people I know in our networks, they could have retired 10 and 20 years ago, looked after their families, they paid off the mortgage, they could just be going off playing golf, maybe volunteering a few hours a week as the treasurer in the local church. But instead, they're working in really demanding jobs, flying all over the world at a moment's notice, different time zones, and really time poor in terms of time to do things, leisure things, social things,
Mm.
playing golf. They don't have time for that stuff. But what they can do as a result is put significant amounts of resources behind Christian ministry, faithful ministries, and they can employ, through their support, they can resource the employment of hundreds of gospel workers. And you can see how the impact of their life then scales much more beyond just the people they're around. And they can also be there for other people to look up and be a Christian witness in that workplace and in that environment. And so just really being faithful to the call God's given us, and being faithful with gifts and talents and abilities that He's given us, and just keeping ourselves focused on the Great Commission. Go into all the world and make disciples of all nations. Just asking ourselves, how can I do that? What's my part? What can I play? How can I use what God's given me to the greatest impact?